Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'd like to give you guys an update on the climbing rose here that I pruned earlier in the year, and also introduce you to the wisteria plant that's flowering nicely at the moment in my parents' front garden. So my parents' front garden is pretty small, but it's basically the side of the house where I am now, and I'll show you the front section. It's only about a metre wide, but it's a nice south facing wall, so it's really good for climbing plants, especially things like wisteria that like a lot of sunshine. So where we are now is the west facing wall. It's the afternoon, so it's getting full sun at the moment, and this is the climbing rose that I made a video of recently. I'll put a link into the iCard now so you can watch that video if you'd like. But basically I cut this back really hard and there wasn't much left of it compared to what it is now, and that was not too long ago actually, because it's now late May and it's put on a huge amount of growth. Some of it's about 3 foot long, so I'll show you a picture now of what it looked like before, and so you can have an idea of how much it's grown just in a few months. So it's really growing nicely. It's not flowering yet, it's still a little bit early. It's normally June time that this starts to flower, but there are a few flower buds starting already. And this side is a west facing side, so it tends to grow a little less vigorously, but there are still some quite strong ones. So you can see this one here, for example. This is actually about 3 foot long now. There's a huge amount of growth. This plant started growing around about March time and it just kept going really. Hasn't been too damaged by the weather luckily this year. We did have some cold winds and there is a little bit of damage. You can see here a little bit of brownie on the leaves, but there's not been any black spot this year. It's been a fairly dry spring so far, and so that's been good. It means we don't have any fungal problems yet, but also this variety doesn't seem to be too susceptible to fungal problems like black spot or powdery mildew, and it always seems to grow quite well. It's often good to have roses in a slightly windier spot, because if they're too sheltered and there's not enough airflow, the leaves stay wet for too long, and that really encourages disease such as black spot. So a more exposed location like this is actually quite favourable for them. You do have to be careful though, because when we have strong winds, these branches can be quite liable to snapping off when the wind blows them too hard, so we do need to make sure that they're tied on quite regularly. And I will be tying these up soon, but not quite yet. They're not quite big enough. And but it has resprouted nicely along the whole length. You can see here lots of little short growths. It is exactly what we were wanting. We'd lay in the branches horizontally, we get lots of short growths, and then these will put on lots of flowers on each growth. We don't really want these long ones unless we're training into new areas. And there's 3 long ones there, but there's nowhere to really train them in, so I'll probably be cutting them out once they've finished flowering. And I'm hoping to find some long growths further up here, because I have put on some new cables. You can see it goes right along there. The cable might be hard to see on the camera. It's just underneath the white cable up there. There's a steel cable, and so that's to extend this rose right along. I will also put some cabling lower down when I get some more materials and get this whole area covered. But I'll go around now and show you the south side. So you can see here, that's the west side there. This is the south side. This gets a lot more sun, so it's growing a lot more vigorously here. I'll need to probably cut back a lot on this side after the flowers are finished this summer, because it's really getting too big there. If you cut back hard during midsummer, that kind of weakens the plant on that side, and it will focus more of its energy on the other parts. Whereas if I give it a hard cut in winter, it just actually encourages more growth. So on this side, as I say, it's really growing a lot. That's because it's the south facing side. The plant's just going to put out its growth in the most economical area, so it will basically just try and grow where it's the sunniest. So that's why this side has got loads of new shoots, quite long vigorous ones. This one not so much. So I need to thin this out. You can see this is a bit further ahead on this side as well. That's because it's south facing. There's a bit more warmth here, so the plants are further ahead. And the ones that are the ones that are furthest ahead are the ones that are up by the wall, because there's a bit of extra heat. So you can see up here, we do actually have a flower bud starting to form already, and there'll be lots more flower buds coming on. These ones I can tell are about to flower soon, because they're getting to the top and the leaves are looking a bit smaller, but also there's lots of side shoots appearing, so these side shoots will all be covered in flowers as well. What normally happens with this variety at least is we get a flower on the top and then about 3 or 4 flowers coming down from all the side shoots. Once that's done, I'll then cut it back quite hard and to encourage it to rebloom a second flush later on in the summer. So that's all really for this rose. I will be giving you guys an update once this is actually in full flower to show you how it looks. At the moment it's looking really healthy and green, but we do have a big storm coming in tomorrow, so I'm thinking some of the branches might get a bit damaged and some of the leaves might also get damaged, but hopefully we won't lose too many flowers, as the flowers at this stage are still in the bud form, so the wind shouldn't really damage them. It's just going to be more the leaves and how the leaves look. So looking down at the front section here, you can see my parents' front area really has got lots of sun. It's south-facing, but it's quite a narrow area. We've got a lot of foxgloves down here. We just let them self-seed. Not many of them are flowering yet. This one's just starting to flower. You can see that one's almost open there. It's just about to flower soon. The main plant along the front here is the Wisteria. As you can see here, lovely big flowers coming down already. This one's probably almost 2 foot long. It smells amazing as well. Got really good scent on this Wisteria. Quite a spicy scent. It's quite nice. So it's quite a large Wisteria. You can see it stretches quite far that way. Where it originates is just around about this middle section here where those white labels are. So it's only about 3 or 4 years old, but it's grown a huge amount. I'll show you a couple of photos now before and after training, because earlier this year, just before it started to put on growth, I did retrain it because it was quite a tangled mess. Basically it had been scrabbling around by itself. It wasn't really in a neatly trained position, so I took out all the branches, redid most of the cables as well, and put up new cables, and then after that tied them all in neatly, did a lot of pruning, and it's looking a lot more orderly and under control now. And it also means that the flowers are easier to see. It's not too jumbled up, because this variety flowers about the same time as the leaves come out. It can look quite jumbled and it's hard to see the flowers. So for example, this section where it's a little bit more congested, the flowers are a bit harder to see, but they're not too bad. You can still see quite a few of them. There is a lot coming as well, so you can see there's quite a few flower there. There's a lot more as this comes down. The racemes, these are called racemes, with basically a big line of flowers. They start at the top and then they end up at the bottom. So these ones are just starting. This one here is quite well along, so you can see hasn't got that many new ones to open up. Coming further up, you can see there's also ones up here, and then there's quite a cluster of flowers at the top there as well. So I put these new cables in, and I'm training them right along. So you can see there, this is actually coming into contact with the roads now, so I need to tie this in to stop it from getting broken by the wind that's going to come tomorrow. So I'll probably do that this afternoon. I've tied it all up with twine. I like using twine because it's biodegradable, so it doesn't last too long. So if you forget about it and the plant thickens up, it's not going to really cut into the stem, cause a big issue. So there's a big cable going at the top there, and as they come down here, there's also a cable that top cable along the top goes right along to the window over there, and then there's a bottom cable as well, which actually goes beyond that window, and it goes just past that shrub, and that bottom cable comes right down and actually comes up to the rows. So I'm also training a branch down here. You see it's quite a distance at the bottom already, and there's also a really long branch down the other side that it sent out last year that I've managed to tie in. That's this one here. Now it did put on a lot of strong side shoots that I've cut off, so you can see here all the side shoots are already growing 2 or 3 foot, so I've cut them back. That will encourage these to branch further, and that will encourage more flowering. I don't want lots of long shoots because there's not enough cabling for them, but I have left 1 or 2 here. So what I'm going to do is the strongest ones I'm actually going to train up onto there. So you can see this one's already grown probably 2 and a bit feet already this year. So I'm going to train this one up so it can start going along that higher wire. And at the end here I've also left them as well, as I want to train them further along the wire. I'm not sure which is going to be the strongest leader, so I've left both of them at the moment, but I will cut one of them back soon, because the one at the end at the moment is actually the weaker one, it's not the strongest. So that's why I've left them. I'll find out which is the strongest leader and then train that one right along the bottom, and that will take it right underneath this window and right to the end here where this cable ends. And that takes me over to the passion flower that I had in the previous video. Hasn't grown a huge amount since the previous update, but that's just because it's not been here for very long. It's only been growing here about a week or 2. So I'm hoping that's going to really pick up soon, so put on some strong growth. There is actually a flower bud here. Not sure if that's going to actually come to anything, it's a very small plant, but we'll keep an eye on that. And generally along the front here, lots of foxgloves. I'll give you guys an update on all these foxgloves at a later date. I've also planted lots of sunflowers, so we've got a few here, some other ones here. These are all Russian giants. There's probably about 6 or 7 in total, all coming down here. So these will be really big. They should fill up these walls nicely, and they're quite tall varieties, but they don't really branch too much. They have really big heads, the Russian giant varieties, so I'm expecting height-wise they should probably get to about the height of the guttering up there, and then they should hopefully flower about that height. I'll have to keep an eye on them, but they're quite close to the wall, so I'm not too worried about the wind. I am a bit concerned that the storm tomorrow might damage them. but they're close enough to the wall that it should be okay. And the storm probably will damage these flowers a little bit. Not much I can do about that. That's part of the reason. Like I did actually want to film this when it was at its absolute peak, which is probably going to be in a few days' time. But I was a bit concerned the wind was going to destroy all the flowers, so that's why I'm filming the Wisteria update now. I'll give you an update probably at the end of the summer for this plant, or maybe when I'm doing the rose update if it's grown a lot. This Wisteria does grow incredibly fast, so I'm expecting, for example, there's another runner up the top here. I'm expecting this to come right to the end of that cable there. I'm also expecting down the bottom here, this shoot to come right along that bottom cable to that shrub. This upper cable, I should be able to get a branch right along that. Unfortunately, there's not any branches from here. I was hoping to tie one in from the back and cover the whole cable, but at the moment the only one's coming up from that section. And at some point I would like to get some more of them growing up, so this will actually be one of the most substantial branches eventually. This branch is only actually 1 year old. This is the second growing season. It came up from the base, but just above the graft, so it's not a sucker from the roots, and it's come up and it grew right along, probably about 6 feet or 2 meters or so. So it's a nice, strong, vigorous growth. I'm going to train it up, so there's going to have on those two wires, and eventually I'll put some more wires in here, and it'll grow right over this wall. So I think that's all for this video. As I say, I'll give you guys an update on the Wisteria and the rose as the summer progresses, and hopefully we'll get plenty of flowers in that rose.